Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at something a little different from our usual content, the Asian American population across the United States, state by state. Now, I don't usually touch on anything race-related here, mostly because these topics can get sensitive fast, and honestly the only time I really think about someone's background is when I'm trying to figure out what to order for dinner. But I get a lot of comments and messages from people asking where certain communities are concentrated in the country, whether it's for moving, visiting family, or just plain curiosity, so today we're breaking it down with real numbers. Asian Americans now make up close to 7% of the entire U.S. population, up significantly from just a couple decades ago, and that number keeps climbing. This isn't a new community either. Asian immigration to the U.S. goes back well over a century, even though a lot of people don't realize that. For reference, the national average sits right around 6%, so keep that number in your head as we go through the list. We're ranking these states by the percentage of their population that identifies as Asian, and we'll throw in some population totals and fun facts along the way. Let's get into it. Number 10, Alaska. Not the state most people would guess, but Alaska has a surprisingly solid Asian community, largely Filipino, thanks to decades of immigration tied to military bases and the fishing industry. There's also a growing Korean and Vietnamese presence in Anchorage. Alaska's Asian population sits at just under 6%, and when you count people who identify as part Asian, that number climbs closer to 8%, giving the state somewhere around 45,000 Asian residents. Number 9, Maryland. Maryland's Asian community is broad and well established, with large Indian, Chinese, Korean, Filipino, and Vietnamese populations, plus a growing number of Pakistani and Taiwanese residents. A lot of this ties back to the D.C. metro area, where government and tech jobs have pulled in skilled immigrants for decades. Roughly 7% of Maryland's population is Asian alone, and that number pushes past 8% once you include multiracial residents, putting the total Asian population somewhere in the neighborhood of 500,000 people. Number 8, Massachusetts. Boston and the surrounding suburbs have one of the more diverse Asian communities on the East Coast, with Chinese, Indian, Vietnamese, and Cambodian populations all well represented. A lot of it ties back to the region's universities and hospitals, which pull in students and researchers from all over Asia who often end up staying. Around 7.5% of the state identifies as Asian, and when you factor in mixed-race residents that climbs a bit higher, landing the state at roughly 550,000 Asian Americans. Number 7, Virginia. Virginia's Asian population is heavily concentrated in the northern part of the state. Think Fairfax, Alexandria, and the suburbs right outside D.C. A lot of residents work in government, defense, or tech, and the Vietnamese and Korean communities in particular have deep roots here going back to the 1970s. About 7% of Virginians identify as Asian, and including mixed-race residents pushes that toward 8%, giving the state close to 700,000 Asian residents. Number 6, Nevada. This one tends to surprise people. Most folks think of Las Vegas as a tourist town, but the metro area has built a genuinely large and fast-growing Asian population over the last couple decades, with Filipino and Chinese communities leading the way. Around 11% of Nevada's population identifies as Asian, and when you include mixed-race residents that number jumps to over 12%, giving the state somewhere around 380,000 Asian residents. Number 5, New York. New York's Asian population is enormous and largely centered in New York City, where you'll find some of the most iconic Asian neighborhoods in the entire country. Flushing and parts of Lower Manhattan have massive Chinese communities, and the city's Chinatown remains one of the oldest and most recognizable in the U.S. About 9.5% of the state's population is Asian, and that number rises past 10% with mixed-race residents included, putting the total close to 2 million people. Number 4, Washington. If you've ever spent time in Seattle, this one won't shock you. The city and its suburbs, especially Bellevue, have been a landing spot for Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and increasingly South Asian immigrants for generations, largely thanks to the tech industry. Around 10.5% of the state identifies as Asian, and factoring in mixed-race residents brings that closer to 12%, giving Washington roughly 850,000 Asian residents. Number 3, New Jersey. New Jersey punches way above its weight here, especially in Middlesex and Hudson counties, which have some of the densest Indian and Chinese communities in the country. Filipino, Korean, and Pakistani populations are also significant. Right around 11% of the state identifies as Asian, and that number edges past 11.5% once mixed-race residents are counted, giving New Jersey close to 1 million Asian residents. Number 2, California. This one probably isn't shocking, but the scale of it is still wild. California is home to some of the most well-known Asian communities in the country, from the historic Chinatown in San Francisco to the massive Vietnamese and Korean populations in Southern California. Nearly 18% of the state's population is Asian, and when you include mixed-race residents that number climbs above 20%, giving California a total Asian population north of 7 million people, by far the largest of any state in raw numbers. Quick pause before number 1, if you're enjoying this kind of breakdown, drop a like and subscribe, it genuinely helps the channel out. Alright, let's get into the top spot. Number 1, Hawaii. This one probably wasn't a surprise to anyone paying attention. Hawaii's history is deeply tied to Asian immigration, particularly from Japan, China, the Philippines, and Korea, going back to the plantation era in the 1800s. It's the only state where Asian Americans, combined with native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander residents, make up a genuine majority of the population. A little over 36% of Hawaii's population identifies as Asian alone, and once you factor in the state's huge mixed-race population, that number rockets up past 55%, giving Hawaii close to 500,000 Asian residents out of a state with a little over 1 million people total. And that's the list. If any of this surprised you, or if your state didn't crack the top 10, let me know down in the comments. I'm always curious what people expected going in. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.